Hi, my name is Brandon Laurent, and this is a short film entitled My Cancer Narrative. This October, I received news that changed the trajectory of my life indefinitely. I was told that I had an 8 centimeter mediastinal mass, and the first thing that happened to me was racing of thoughts along with a rush of different emotions. But the emotion that stuck out to me the most was the emotion of gratitude, because for several months prior to that, I had been dismissed via urgent cares and two different doctors who, were treating more so for symptoms than actually inclined to look into what was going on with me. And had I not gone to the Carbon Health facility for a COVID test and had a provider who thought something did not seem right and proceeded to do a workup for walking pneumonia, I too would have continued, just going through the motions, feeling gaslit, and probably went down that pathway until the symptoms got so bad that I no longer could take care of myself. So, October 24th, I started having fevers and chills. Right after work, I took my temperature and had a Tmax of 101.4, which is just my highest temperature for the night. And instantly could tell that something was off and something was different. It didn't feel like, you know, it didn't feel like a normal cold or anything of the sort. So I immediately went ahead and booked myself an appointment for an upcoming COVID test. Luckily, the Carbon Health system, which is located all around LA, services free tests under the CARES Act. So I went ahead at around, I want to say 5 p.m. on Sunday to go do that test. I also had a physician assistant who took a look at me. She listened to my lungs. She, gave my eyes a look, my ears, the normal just like workup when you go to the provider. And she told me that something sounded off with my right lower lobe in my lung. And from there, wanted to do a workup for walking pneumonia. I was willing to continue with it, because she first asked if I had the time for it. And I, immediately obliged and said, if I'm not here now, I would be at home just sleeping, because I haven't been able to do anything else. So we did a chest x-ray. We waited for the radiology to come back with the results, which took a few hours. And when she gave me the results, they ultimately told me that I had a mass. As soon as she said I had a mass, the very first thing I asked was, is it in my right is it in my right lung? She said yes. And I told her, I've been having a sharp pain on inhalation there, one since the visit that I had with her, along with just in the past. And immediately, my mind started racing, racing with different thoughts of times that I went to the urgent care, because I had been to the urgent care twice this year. I normally don't go or am seen for anything because I'm relatively a healthy person. And the first time I went to the urgent care was back in May after my second Pfizer shot. I had the normal, down and out for the day, but something felt different and off, which was, anytime I took a deep breath in, I would have a stabbing pain in my chest. And I alerted my friend who's a respiratory tech. We go way back to when I was in the military. And in the military, I worked in the medical field. So I was already prompted to have an understanding of when symptoms come up that just don't align with what your normal disposition, or even just with the Pfizer vaccination, for that instance, I knew to be seen. So I went ahead to the urgent care, was seen there, and was dismissed essentially by a doctor who just immediately thought that it had to be muscular because she didn't hear anything in my lungs. The pathway she could have taken from that point was, hey, let's just do a chest x-ray to be on the safe side. It would have been no extra work for her. It would have just been a matter of ordering it and then me having it administered, and went from there. But instead, she treated for the symptoms, and by that, she gave me a Toradol shot, and I was fine. That was back in May. Fast forward to the beginning of October, I had started noticing different symptoms that made me think maybe I have an immuno issue, in regards to thinking I had maybe hyperthyroidism or something of the sort. Started inquiring with my mom about any past, family history of it, because I was noticing things such as fatigue, When I would wake up, my heart was racing and pounding in my chest like I had just been working out. Um, and my hair was thinning, my scalp had a searing pain to it, and I had even noticed a patch of hair missing. And I had always had like very full, healthy hair. So that was just extremely alarming to me. And once again, anytime you recognize something seems off with your normal disposition as a person, it's good to, one, make a note of it, and two, make sure that you're seen. So I did two things. I initially set up an appointment because I'm a veteran. I set up an appointment with the VA with my primary care provider and explained to him the different symptoms I was having. I had pushback even in that regard because when I contacted the call center and told them I wanted to leave a message for my doctor, they were dismissive and said, "Hey, you have an appointment coming up. Like, are you sure you still want to leave a message?" I responded, "Hey, I'm not asking you to leave a message. I'm telling you to leave a message." And I was pushy in that regard because my symptoms that I was having was a sharp pain in, not a sharp pain, sorry. My heart was racing. I was having a searing pain in my scalp. And these type of symptoms are extremely alarming. And anytime something is going on with your heart, your provider always wants to know. Why? Because if it's something that seems that emergent, they will either direct you to the urgent care or they will try to book a quick appointment just to see you and lay eyes on you. Because when it comes to those different systems of our body, it can be a very rapid change in regards to how well we're doing. So, she ended up leaving the message. I told her exactly what to write. I had already made a note within my notes of every different symptom I had been experiencing for that moment. And lo and behold, that very day, I received a call from my provider stating, "Hey, I want you to go to the urgent care." Looked up 3 different urgent cares that were under the Mission Act. Mind you, the Mission Act for veterans is that we are able to be seen 3 times a year, I believe. Yeah, 3 times a year for just different symptoms that we're having, and the VA will cover it as long as they consider it to be applicable. So I went to the urgent care for that. And when I went there, the doctor was super nice. He did lab work on me. And he also just kind of took a look at my scalp and gave me a prescription for some different vitamins. I was a bit annoyed with that experience because the first thing that I encountered was a lot of pushback from the staff who worked at the urgent care. Just like, what is the main complaint, or chief complaint is the medical jargon that we would use for that, in regards to why he's here. What is his chief complaint? He's saying he's having, heart palpitations. He's saying his heart is racing. He's saying his scalp is searing. And I opened the door and I was like, my scalp is searing. Like, this is why I'm here. Like, I don't want to be here as much as you guys clearly don't want to see me, but I'm here, one, because of my doctor, and two, because this is not something that you just sit on and hope gets better. They were also giving me pushback about the insurance, and I also was able to hear them because the doors are thin, and I guess they just didn't, they weren't cognizant to the fact that patients can hear you still, regardless of if the door is closed. But they were just going on about how much money they don't get due to the fact that it's via the Missions Act. And when they came in, they did a workup and was like, "Hey, these are the different things that your doctor has asked for you to have done. We can go ahead and do all of them, or I can go ahead and tell you on this list what is pertinent and what you should do." And I was like, "I'm doing all of them. It's covered by the CARES Act." And he was like, "Oh, well, we're still working on that insurance part, so it might be $800 out of pocket." I said, "I've been here before, and it was a very cut and dry and simple thing to do. I have the contact number if it's needed to have it taken care of." And from there, they came back. I did an EKG, I did lab work, and he prescribed the vitamins, and he gave me something for my scalp. That set in motion for me that I would never go back to that urgent care, just based off of that visit, based off of being dismissed by the nurses who I was having to work with. Because once again, the doctor was great. Once he got into the room, things were fine. However, the doctor is not the first person you encounter. And normally your patient care starts from the time that you walk into that door. So already, just from the clerics who work at the front to the nurses that I was working with, I was having constant pushback. I was having a nurse overtalk me as I'm trying to relay my symptoms. And the reason I'm going into detail with these things are just because I want them to be things that people look for when they are going to places for their care, especially when you are paying out of pocket for your care, because these things are not cheap, and you should be at least seen and heard beyond just, going through the motions of what they feel like they have to do. The vitamins he had prescribed was just vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin B, and biotin. And to me, I was just like, these are over-the-counter things I could have taken anyways, and I knew that that wasn't all I needed. Fast forward a bit forward to October 24th. That's when I had the fevers and chills. I went ahead and went to the Carbon Health for a COVID test, and that's when I ultimately found out that I had this mass. I was told, due to the symptoms I was having and the fact that the radiologist confirmed that I did have a mass, I needed to go to an ER immediately. So I went to the VA ER emergency room in Santa Monica and was seen immediately. Thankfully, there was no one there at that time, so it was just a very quick process. And I was treated with great care. I was listened to. I had great conversations with the people who were taking care of me by, letting me know every step of the way exactly what's going to be going on. By the time I finished that visit, because I had to go to CT for them to go ahead and confirm the fact that I have it, I ended up being told that I had an 8-centimeter mediastinal mass and that I needed to follow up with my primary care provider. This situation I was, very much so in shock. I was still kind of going through the motions of things, but I will say that my care leading up to then, specifically with that physician assistant that I had seen when I went to get my COVID test, meant the world to me, because I could have continued to be dismissed. I know that happens often, and my body would have just continued fighting on without, until it could no longer take care of itself. And the physician just, she cared, you can tell when someone truly cares about their patient. And that's exactly what she did. She wrote down exactly what she wanted done for me, a septic workup along with CT. She told me she was going to contact me the following day to just see how everything went, and she did exactly that. And she told me that I can continue to contact her as I went through the steps to find out exactly what was going on with me. From there, I had to do, some lab work. I was seen by my provider that following day because luckily, as I said, when I had made the message to my provider, I had also booked an appointment. The woman did not want me, the person who I had spoken to rather, did not want me to leave a message because I had an appointment coming up, but that appointment was so far away that, I'm happy I did both. And, that's how I ended up finding out about the mass. And my appointment, which initially was just to talk about my scalp problems and the fact that my hair was thinning, now turned into an appointment about, whoa, last night you went to the emergency room and found out you have a mass. Where are we going to go from there? So, my doctor took over from there, ensured me of every step that we were going to be moving from there. He let me know that even though we didn't know what this mass was, whether it was benign or malignant meaning that it could be possibly, or that it was cancerous, that they were already going to get a whole team set up so that there would be no delays in my care if it happened to be cancerous. Fast forwarding a bit more, I did a PET scan on the 5th of November. That PET scan was to see if, the mass had spread to other systems of my body or if it was localized. Luckily, that came back as it being localized. And then moving forward from there, I did my lung biopsy on the 21st. I had a great nurse. I had a great doctor. My doctor, every step of the way, ensured that I knew exactly what she was going to do before she did it, because the procedure requires you to remain awake. You are, of course, given pain medicine, stuff like that, but you have to stay awake because they have to ensure that your breathing is not all over the place. And she was the one who also made sure that I was educated on the location of the mass and what they're looking for and why they're going about doing things the way that they are. So once again, seeing a difference between providers who understand that it's important to educate your patient, that it's important to keep them within the loop, and just not removing empathy from the process, opposed to those who dismiss you, your cares, and your questions. Um, and, fast forwarding to now, I've finally gotten the results of my biopsy back after having to do a few calls just to check on what was taking as long as it was, because I was supposed to get them back within a week. And being told that I have thymoma, and it's a rare form of cancer. I believe it's less than 1 in 1.4 million people end up with this cancer, and it's of the thymus gland that's located directly underneath your sternum. It's a gland that generates T cells or white blood cells to help you fight off infections, and normally shrinks after puberty. It's used a lot during the process of puberty and continues to shrink for the rest of your life. So, from there, I'm now at this place of so many different life changes have happened just from the beginning inception of this, the symptoms I was experiencing, being dismissed, dealing with the form of gaslighting in the sense of knowing that something is wrong, but being told that you're just fine. Like, you just hurt your shoulder. Like, that's why your neck is hurting. That's why your chest is hurting the way it is. So I'm just going to treat you for your symptoms. And now being at a place where I'm recognizing 8 centimeters doesn't happen overnight. From the time I was first seen in the urgent care, if they had just did a chest x-ray, I am more than sure they would have seen something, because a nodule can be found, and a nodule is, I think, less than 3 centimeters. So I know for a fact that by then, when I was seen back in May, if she had just done a chest x-ray, they would have been able to find it. And that's where my gratitude for this physician assistant came in, because this was a provider who went out of her way to do steps beyond what she had to do, which was just a simple COVID test. From there, I just wanted to, after talking about my own disposition, I just wanted to segue into things that resonated with me and continue to light that fire under me about the importance of health care advocacy and health communication, which is why I'm in this field to begin with. When I was working in the medical system back in the Navy, I got to see a lot of things firsthand when it came to racial health disparities, along with just the importance of being able to advocate for oneself and or being able to advocate for your loved ones. Because when they are no longer able to advocate for themselves or are dealing with an emergent case, you are that person who has to do that in their care. And it can be a daunting task, but also you are essentially like that champion for them, ensuring that their needs are met in a system that often prides itself on being sanitary and clinical, and sometimes lacks the empathy side that is necessary. So some of the things that I had wanted to talk about in regards to advocacy tips was listening to your body. When you recognize that something is not matching your natural disposition, in my case, I was experiencing fatigue, unlike fatigue I had experienced before. And this was after working out and after doing things to kind of keep my body in motion. Sleeping, multiple times during the day and just dragging through the different activities that I had to do, I recognized that something was wrong there, because that was not normal to how I naturally move through the day. As well as I kept notes and still have notes within my phone that give a detailed snapshot and detailed journal of the different symptoms I was experiencing. When I started experiencing those symptoms, if there was any changes, describing them, because when you describe pain, you want to be able to explain if it's dull, if it's sharp, if it's searing, if it's localized, meaning that it's just in one place, or if it radiates outward. Because all of these little details kind of help a doctor who's looking at essentially like a puzzle, right? They're trying to piece together everything to see the whole picture as is. And oftentimes, and it's not to any fault of any provider or any medical care professional, medical diseases and things of that nature are so nuanced that oftentimes you'll kind of work down it, you'll kind of work down a system or an outline and go off of that and go off of what you're seeing. So in visits, they can kind of start guiding their questions towards what they already think something is. And if you have an outline, you're kind of keeping them on track along with yourself on track with exactly what's been going on with you, just so that it's curtailed to your own personal the own personal problems that you've been experiencing. This also helps too because it lets them know that more um, you are more involved with your care. Therefore, it makes them have to be that much more involved too, and that much more um, willing to work with you and communicate with you the things that you need to know, because you're already showing this great effort on your behalf in regards to your care. In a perfect world, you would not have to do that, but we already know that the the healthcare system in America is extremely flawed. So in this case, and then also providers are seeing multiple patients, can suffer from being burned out. So this is a way of helping them help you. Um, Also, I wanted to highlight the fact that, never let a provider dismiss you. And to expound upon that, go to those providers that help you feel seen. After the two experiences that I had with the urgent care, I wrote it off as I will never come back here, right? Because there's no reason for me to continue going to a place where I'm fighting an uphill battle just to be regarded, just to be heard, just to be properly seen for the things that are actually actively going on with me. And that's why I had such great gratitude initially with a provider who was willing to regard me for me and work with me and go above and beyond just a simple COVID test and do a workup for pneumonia, which led to us finding out, hey, you have a mass. Um, I also wanted to add in another thing, that family history is pertinent. That can oftentimes help a doctor know exactly where to look. There's a lot of different diseases in the world, or ailments that are rooted in familial history, like someone in your family may have already experienced it. Therefore, the percentage or the likelihood of you having it as well is higher. So it's just good to have that also within your journal of information that you would be utilizing for your care. Um, Another thing that was important to me and that is important to share with providers, no matter if you are the medical clerks who work in the front, who do the booking of appointments, who are doing the initial communications with a patient, to the nurses, the providers, the anyone who works in the healthcare system. Recognize the fact that while hospitals are sterile and clinical, patient care does not and should not be as well. Empathy is an extremely important part of what we do. It helps us break things down to patient. It helps us recognize the fact that just because you are doing everything systematically as you were taught, as you know that you should be doing, doesn't mean that it's being received the same way. There's several different emotions that go on when you're dealing with different ailments, diseases, diagnoses, grief, and other emotions that align with it, that it's important that you don't lose track of the fact that everyone's human. And one of the greatest traits that we have as a human being is empathy for our fellow human, brother and sister. And that was something that I carried with myself when I worked in the medical field. It didn't matter who my patient was. I treated them the way that I would want to see my family treated. I treated them the way that any human being should be treated. And that was extremely fulfilling for me. And there were instances where, we were telling patients things that they needed to know for their well-being that were a matter of life or death, but in such a way to where they could receive it and they could feel seen so that they can make the decisions that were important for them. We were a listening ear. We were, a warm body who was there to express, compassion when necessary. And these things are just as important as the medicine and the plans of care that we grant. And then lastly, something that I've just been experiencing now as I'm going through the motions of having to express to family and friends that, I've been diagnosed with cancer. It's okay to have your concerns, and it's okay to want people to remain optimistic. But also there's a level of realism that's there too, and a realism that sets in with people who are actively dealing with them. For me, due to my medical background, I already knew that having a mass within my body that was 8 centimeters in size was not okay. It was already actively pushing against my lung. It had me already winded just doing very simple activities. And I acknowledged the fact that no matter if it was benign or malignant, some type of intervention was going to end up being taken. So instead of giving myself just optimism and optimism alone, I was also setting myself in realism so that no matter what came back, good or bad, I was prepared for the fight that was ahead of me. Some of my friends, and loved ones had a hard time wrapping their mind around that, but I knew I was doing the right thing because once I was given that news, even though it still felt like a gut punch, even though it did turn my world upside down, I knew that I was prepared to fight that fight. I had been preparing myself for that purpose. So I think it's important to help people along that way, to give them that room and that space to process things the way that they can. And if you are facing people who just cannot find optimism within them, it's okay for you to be that source for them, but not necessarily push so hard on them that they can't feel things the way that they need to. And on the flip side, I've allowed those who I love to feel their emotions, rightfully so. I had so many people who would apologize for crying or for feeling sad, and I'm like, no, feel your emotions out loud, because we don't know what's on the other side of things. And one thing I've noticed taking care of the sick and the dying is the fact that if you don't get those emotions out, if you don't tell people how you feel it in real time, it will continue to hurt you, much longer after the fact. And I find it important to just feel those emotions in real time. Grieving is a human trait that, to me, is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It allows us to know that we are alive. From there, I just wanted to segue into a TED Talk that my Professor Cook, had told me to watch that was also aligned with me, because beyond being in school, beyond being a veteran, I am an artist. That is something that is integral to me, in the sense of I don't think I would be who I was if I didn't have a means of expressing myself in some form. I am a photographer and I'm a writer, and I got to watch a TED Talk that had Angelo Maradino in it. And it was just extremely insightful. He documented the life of his wife, who was dealing with breast cancer. And even though he got a lot of pushback, he recognized the power and the potency of social media, the power and the potency of images and art, in the sense of that mortality is something that is put in your face when you are regarding art that works with it, that it is a part of its subject matter. It allows you to go through those motions in real time, and it gives you a place that is eternalized forever. That whenever you're feeling down, hopeless, or happy or sad, you can go to this space and feel it again. And that's extremely cathartic. That is cathartic for the people that you're regarding. In the case of Angelo, it was cathartic for him taking it, and for his wife being on the receiving end, and he recognized that it was a gift. He recognized that her laughter and her levity in those situations were like medicine. And for those creating, like in my case, I will be absolutely documenting my journey, because I know it's going to be cathartic. I was someone who always leaned on writing to help me with my emotions. And even doing something such as making this film has helped me be able to gather my thoughts and place it somewhere, so that they're not just running amok in my head, and emotions that are all over the place. And I also recognize, as he had recognized, that it's helpful for others. It's helpful for your family. It's helpful for your friends. And it's helpful for others who are going through this and think that they're alone. And I find strength in that, right? Because I think that communication and tools such as social media are as important as you choose to use them. And, there is strength in being willing to just bare yourself, bare your soul to the world or to those that you care about. So for me, I will be, photographing, documenting, writing, and continuing to speak on, the different things that I experience and the things that matter to me, because I recognize that while this is a hurdle, and it's a hurdle that I'm willing to fight through, I want to take life in its full regard. And to take life in its full regard, to me, means to take in all the emotions as they come. So for me, I will be photographing and documenting my family and my friends. I will be documenting the process for myself and writing about the feelings as they come, and hoping that no matter what ends up on the other side of things, it can help someone or myself. And I just want to thank you guys for listening to this. This was, relatively lengthy, but it was extremely helpful for me. And as I'm preparing for this fight that I'm about to have with thymoma, I know that I am deeply loved. I know that I have a great tribe, and I'm blessed with the people that I have centered around me, from family to friends to mentors as well. And it brings me so much joy because I've had people in real time, long before this, tell me how I felt or how they felt about me, and known that I've done the same. And Angelo Maradino, as he was talking to his wife, and after the cancer had metastasized to her brain, he recognized the fact that she wasn't always with it. But when he asked her, as friends and family were coming to give their final goodbyes, how can you recognize that you have touched so many people? Or do you recognize rather that you have touched so many people? She stated back, because they touched me. And it was such a simple, sharp, and quick answer for her. And even with all the pain, the things she was going through, and as things worsened for her, it was on the tip of her tongue. And that's how I feel. I feel like human life is not about the things that we gather along the way in regards to material objects. While that is a part of it, we can't take it with us. But the emotions, the memories, the way that we made people feel, the lives we touched, and the lives that have touched us are integral. And those are the things that carry us through. So once again, thank you, and have a good day.